In the quiet hum of the classroom, the air felt thick with the buzz of pencils scratching against paper. The clock ticked, counting down the final moments of a history test, and Princess Charlotte sat poised at her desk, eyes fixed on the paper in front of her. In which year did World War I begin, was one of the questions on the last test she had to take before the nationwide junior essay competition, which she had competed in every year since she could read and write. Around her, the other students were absorbed in their work, some moving quickly through the questions, others pausing, chewing their pens in forced concentration. For most, it was just another test, another challenge to overcome in the routine of school. But for Charlotte, this test held more weight than the others. She was well aware that her performance was scrutinized more than anyone else's. Royalty was never allowed to be mediocre. As she read through the possible answers to the first question, her fingers tightened around her pencil. The answer options were listed neatly, but Charlotte's gaze lingered on the first one. It was wrong. The year they had listed was several years off. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly scanned the other choices, but they all had the same mistake. Charlotte bit her lip, her mind racing. She knew history. She knew the correct year. She also knew the consequences of letting something like this slide. She shifted in her seat, glancing around at the other students. James Fitzgerald sat a few rows away, scribbling hastily as if eager to finish, his eyes darting over his paper, seemingly oblivious to the discrepancy. Charlotte hesitated. Should she speak up? It would draw attention to her, and she could already feel the weight of her title pressing on her. Being royalty meant being perfect, always. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the pencil down, deciding the right thing had to be done. Raising her hand slowly, she looked toward Mr. Thompson, who was standing by the whiteboard, reviewing his own notes. He glanced over, his expression unreadable. Charlotte's heart beat faster as she waited. "Yes, Charlotte?" Mr. Thompson asked, his voice a mixture of curiosity and mild amusement, clearly surprised by the interruption. "I think there's an error on the test, sir," Charlotte said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The years for World War I are incorrect." The room went quiet. Charlotte felt every pair of eyes on her. Her classmates shifted, some exchanging glances, others freezing in their seats. James raised an eyebrow, visibly annoyed. Mr. Thompson's face went from amusement to a subtle frown. "Are you sure, Charlotte?" he asked, his tone a little dismissive. "Perhaps you're mistaken. We'll review it later." But Charlotte wasn't about to back down. "No, sir. I'm certain. The year is wrong." She could feel the tension mounting in the room as she spoke, the quiet murmur of disbelief in the air. It wasn't about the error. It was about her standing up in front of her classmates, correcting her teacher. It was unheard of. "Smarty Pants at it again," James quipped in a whisper. "She says the question's wrong. Like she knows everything." His tone was cold and snarky as always, but Charlotte didn't mind. It wasn't like they ever got along anyway. "And what if she's right, James?" Ellie Parker, Charlotte's friend, countered. "Wouldn't it mean all the other questions could be wrong as well? Learn to stay quiet when you are not spoken to." "E for elephant," James replied sharply, finally drawing Mr. Thompson's attention. "Quiet." His voice rose high above theirs. "And you, James, mind the words you use in this class." James sunk into his chair as Mr. Thompson's gaze returned to Charlotte. He hesitated, his fingers tapping nervously on his desk. "We'll look into it after class, Charlotte," he said, though there was no conviction in his voice. "Please continue." But Charlotte couldn't just let it go. Her decision had been made. She stood firm, her voice steady as she added, "The correct year is 1914, sir. Not 1913. Here she met Mr. Thompson's gaze, her heart pounding. He glanced at her for a long moment, then turned his attention to the rest of the class. "All right, everyone," Mr. Thompson said, forcing a smile. "Let's wrap up. We'll review the test afterward." He moved on quickly, but Charlotte could feel the shift in the room. The murmurs began, and though they weren't loud, they were enough to make her feel exposed, even vulnerable. She went back to her paper, trying to focus, but her mind kept racing. Had she made a mistake? Would this cause more trouble? As the class ended and the bell rang, Charlotte gathered her things, trying to ignore the stares from her classmates. James didn't speak to her, but his eyes lingered as he walked out. Charlotte could feel his judgment even in the silence. Outside, the sun shone down over the courtyard, but Charlotte felt none of its warmth. The courtyard, usually a place of peace and escape, now felt like a stage where all eyes were on her. She found a quiet bench in the corner, her hands resting on her lap. She recalled the morning's events, her audacious move made in a moment of quick thinking. It was starting to hit her. Had she done the right thing? Mr. Thompson's reaction was so vague, offering no solace whatsoever. Her actions had felt necessary, but now she wasn't so sure. What if she got in trouble for disrupting the peace? Her parents would be so disappointed. Her thoughts were interrupted by the familiar sound of footsteps. Ellie walked over and sat beside her, her gaze soft and understanding. "Are you okay?" Ellie asked, her voice light but laced with concern. Charlotte sighed, leaning back against the bench. "I don't know, Ellie. I'm not sure I should have said anything. What if they think I'm trying to make a scene? What if they think I'm just showing off?" She looked over at Ellie, her eyes searching for reassurance. Ellie smiled, a reassuring grin that always washed Charlotte's doubts and fears away. Ellie was a bright young lass, beautiful and charming. She wasn't born to as much privilege as Charlotte, but none of that was material to their deep bond and friendship. Ellie had known Charlotte for a few years and had always admired her for her intelligence and kindness. But more than that, she saw Charlotte as a regular person who just wanted to fit in. Many times, Ellie offered the much-needed comfort, acceptance, and true friendship Charlotte craved. She was also an escape from the demands of royal life, and what's more, Ellie was an intelligent study partner too. Together, they made perfect grades and trumped rival schools in various competitions. They were truly the power team. "Charlotte, you did the right thing. The test was wrong, and you corrected it. It's not about being perfect, it's about being honest," Ellie said. Her words were simple but carried the reassurance Charlotte needed. Powerful, and Charlotte found herself holding on to them. "But what about everyone else?" Charlotte asked. "What if they don't think it's about honesty? What if they just think I'm trying to be better than them?" "Who cares?" Ellie said, her tone light but serious. "You did what was right. If they can't see that, that's their problem." She nudged Charlotte gently. "And you know what? I think they respect you for it. It's not every day someone calls out a teacher, especially someone like you." Charlotte let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Ellie's words, simple as they were, made her feel lighter. Maybe Ellie was right. Maybe this wasn't about looking good, it was about doing what was right, no matter the cost. And even if some people didn't get it, it didn't matter. The bell rang, signaling the end of the break period. As they stood to head back to class, Charlotte felt a renewed sense of determination. She couldn't change what had happened, but she could walk forward with her head held high. The next class was history again, but this time the atmosphere was different. Mr. Thompson had gone to the headmaster to discuss the error Charlotte had pointed out. When the class settled in, the door opened, and the headmaster himself walked in. He was a tall man with a stern face, but there was a hint of respect in his gaze when he looked at Charlotte. "Class, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge a small oversight in today's test," the headmaster said, his voice calm but firm. Princess Charlotte pointed out an error in the year for World War I. She was correct. I commend her for her attention to detail and her courage to speak up. The room fell silent. Charlotte felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but she didn't look down, she didn't need to. This wasn't about seeking validation. This was about standing up for what was right, even when it wasn't easy. As the headmaster spoke, a soft clapping began from the back of the room. It was tentative at first, but as more students joined in, it grew louder. The applause swelled until the entire class rose to a standing ovation, clapping for her. It wasn't just the correction that they were applauding, it was the courage it took to stand up, to challenge the norm, to do the right thing when no one else would. Charlotte stood there, caught between pride and surprise. This wasn't how she had imagined it. She had expected reprimands, perhaps even scorn, but instead, she was receiving something much more valuable: respect. As the clapping died down, Charlotte found herself smiling, the weight of the day lifting. She had done what she believed was right, and in the end, that was all that mattered. The school day came to a close, and Charlotte found herself walking out of the building with Ellie by her side. The day had been full of unexpected twists, but as they approached the gates of the school, Charlotte felt lighter. The storm inside her had passed. She had been honest, she had corrected the test error, and she had received a standing ovation for it. What more could she ask for? Later that evening, back at Kensington Palace, Charlotte sat by the window in her room, the lights of the city twinkling below. Her parents entered, the door opening and shutting quietly behind them. They had heard the news. "Mom," Charlotte's voice trailed off as she turned to face her parents, her eyes calm and searching, waiting to be sure what the occasion was before rushing to speak. "Well done, Charlotte," Kate, her mother, said, her voice warm with pride. "You did the right thing," her father, Prince William, added. "You heard?" Charlotte asked, surprised. "Of course," William responded in a lofty tone. "I hear everything about you, my little eaglet." Charlotte smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. It wasn't about the standing ovation or the applause. It was about knowing she had done something good, something important. And for the first time, she felt that her role as a princess meant more than just wearing a crown. It meant standing up for truth and challenging the norms, even when no one expected her to. And in that moment, Charlotte realized something important: leadership wasn't about being perfect. It was about having the courage to speak up, to correct what was wrong, and to be true to who you are. That, she knew, was the most valuable lesson of all. In the days that followed, Charlotte and Ellie immersed themselves in study at the school's library, preparing for the junior essay competition. Charlotte had previously wanted to write about the adverse effects of plastic litter and waste in the oceans, but she changed her mind. She had a better idea, one that would win her gold for sure. The little mistakes teachers make and how they affect students' grades. She scribbled slowly one day at the library and looked up at Ellie. "This title is quite long, isn't it?" she asked, hoping for a sincere response. "There is no such thing as right or wrong, long or short, when it comes to being creative," Ellie started softly. "If it feels right in your heart, then it most certainly is." Charlotte found herself smiling. Sometimes, she wondered if she and Ellie were truly the same age. Ellie was so wise. Anyway, Charlotte retained the title and continued on her essay about how even adults and